the thing that really aggravates police officers, this is my experience as a prosecutor, the first safe opportunity you have to pull over, that's what you should do. Spending additional time, they're just going to assume that you're trying to, eat contraband or hide something or whatever. So we are the Armed Attorneys. Today we're going to be talking about a perfect traffic stop, and this is if you are carrying. Now, this is a question we get frequently. I carry every single day. Sometimes we go a little bit faster than the speed limit. What are kind of best practices to get through this interaction, minimizing the risk exposure, maybe getting away with a warning? But we're going to be talking about some things you can do ahead of time and some best practices for during the stop itself. But before we begin, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting that like button. If you're not already, join us over on armedattorneys.com. Make sure to subscribe to our newsletter. We use that for just kind of random email blasts of important information, not spamming folks. I mean, we don't send those out very often, but if we do, it's usually kind of important stuff. So check us out, armedattorneys.com. Edwin Walker, good to see you.
Yes, good to see you. So we're not talking about a traffic stop that comes after a high-speed chase as a result of you robbing a liquor store.
No, we're talking about just generic, and the most common reason, and the Supreme Court has even commented on this, that the traffic laws are so numerous, it's just a matter of time before the police have reasonable suspicion to pull someone over. The vast majority of traffic stops come and go without incident. Yeah, but we are assuming that this isn't like fleeing a scene or having a high-speed chase, or there's a rule we have in Texas, or at least I tell my clients, only break one law at a time. So if you're speeding, don't be doing anything else illegal. If you're possessing drugs, not a good idea. If you're going to be playing your music too loud, maybe you don't speed. That's good advice.
Yeah, we should have brought a copy of the Texas Transportation Code just for demonstrative purposes, because it is about that thick. You would think that, wow, the Texas legislature spends a lot of time regulating
they really
traffic
hate cars.
Things that go. They really do. They have a whole bunch of traffic laws, many of which you don't know about, many of which traffic ticket attorneys don't know about.
Yeah.
It comes as a surprise. Sometimes you look to see things like depth of tread. Mm-hmm. Depth of tread, so the police officer can look at your tire and estimate that your treads are not deep enough and stop you because he has reasonable suspicion.
Or is your tent? Yeah, I don't know how they get some tents are very, very obvious.
Right.
But those tents that are legal but on the edge, it's like cops get that wrong a lot.
No, and it's terrible. And you have to signal your turn 100 feet before you actually get to the intersection.
Oh yeah. But there are a few things that you can do beforehand. Obviously, know your state's law. Sounds kind of like a no-brainer. But you want to make sure that the firearm you're carrying, the way you're carrying the firearm, that you yourself can legally possess it. We're kind of assuming all those things are all squared away. We're just looking at a routine traffic stop, maybe suspected of speeding.
And just to think, the laws have changed greatly in the gun owner's favor. Most states used to totally prohibit the carrying of a handgun in somebody's motor vehicle. In fact, 30 years ago, we're coming up on the 30th anniversary of the Texas concealed handgun license law going into effect. Prior to that, nobody could carry a handgun in their motor vehicle. There was one bizarre traveling exception, which I'm sure that
nobody ever fell into.
Some of our commentators will go, well, what about the traveling exception? Yes, we're all aware of the traveling exception. We know it exists. Other than that, nobody but police officers were allowed to carry a handgun in their motor vehicle.
Yeah, and then the last thing that you want to think about, so firearm, legally possessed, carry the right way, you're not prohibited. Something to think about ahead of time, and then we'll get into the traffic stop itself, is, thinking about how is this traffic stop going to go down, and this is just, I say this to my clients, maybe not storing the firearm in the same location as whatever documentation you're required to turn over. License and insurance, or license and registration. Or if you're required to produce a license or handgun permit at the time, keeping those documents away from the area that you're actually keeping the gun itself, because you don't want any confusion on the side of the road reaching into an area where a firearm's located when really you're just trying to retrieve a document.
Right. It's very awkward to go, excuse me, officer, let me get my license and insurance out of the glove compartment that also holds my handgun and the bag of weed that I'm carrying.
Oh yeah, that happened recently. Well, and it's the meme. It's like how to not waste time giving the officer your license and registration. It's like, all right, that's how you get hurt. We don't want to do that. That's what this whole thing's about, making sure folks don't get
Yes.
hurt.
Carry your license. What I do, just a piece of free advice out there. I carry my driver's license, my LTC, and my insurance card all in the same slot in my wallet.
Yeah.
So I can pull all three out of them, throw all three out with one movement.
Yeah. All right. So going on to, all right, you're cruising along. Maybe you're not paying full attention, but you see the red and blues light up, fire up behind you. What is kind of the first thing that you do, or you tell your gun owner clients, hey, this is probably the right thing to do?
Pull over to the right.
Yes. Yeah. Not taking extended time, detours, delays, all those things. The thing that really aggravates police officers, this is my experience as a prosecutor, the first safe opportunity you have to pull over, that's what you should do. Spending additional time, they're just going to assume that you're trying to, eat contraband or hide something or whatever. So don't let any bad assumptions be made. Just first safe opportunity to pull over, that's what you should do.
And pulling over into a parking lot is probably always your best bet. Police officers used to actually, sometimes whenever you pull over on the road, they'll actually get on the loudspeaker and say, pull over into the parking lot.
Yeah.
But now here in Texas, we have the move over law.
Yeah.
And that is designed to protect police officers originally. Now I think, didn't they expand it to tow truck drivers and construction workers?
Anybody with flashing lights at this point.
Anybody with flashing lights. Is that here in Texas, you have to pull over if there's an unoccupied lane. If there's not an unoccupied lane, you have to slow down 20 miles an hour below the posted speed limit when you pass that vehicle.
Yeah. So, and when he says pull over, he's saying change lanes away from, the vehicles that are pulled over with their emergency lights activated.
But never pull to the left.
Yeah. So,
never.
All right. Next one is preparing your vehicle. What do you tell your clients about getting ready for, officers about to approach you?
Roll down your window and keep your hands where my eyes can see them.
Yeah. So, preparing, if it's nighttime, activating the dome light, rolling the window down. If it's raining, obviously don't roll it all the way down, but rolling your window down, keeping your hands at 10 and 2, that would be preparing for the officer's approach. This is also where I say, if you can safely retrieve the required documentation, let's say you just happen to keep it in the same location as your firearm. If you can pull that out before the officer can get out of their car, that might be the time to do it. If they're already approaching you, I wouldn't go reaching around.
Right. I mean, you wouldn't want anything being misinterpreted. And for all of you folks who are thinking to yourself, y'all are just a bunch of bootlickers, aren't you? We're just trying to keep people safe, right?
Yeah, no, because the place to fight all this stuff, and this is where the lawyer instinct comes in. The place to fight this stuff is in the courtroom.
Don't fight on the side of the road.
Yeah, police are going to do whatever they're going to do. If they violate your rights, if they do something improper, if they illegally obtain evidence, there's remedies for that in the courtroom. The place not to fight is on the side of the road. And think about this. They have their car video, dash cam video. They have a body-worn camera. They probably have a microphone on their lapel. So everything's going to be captured at this point. And think about this being played in front of a jury, right? We want to appear reasonable. I mean, we've all seen those body cam videos with people freaking out over the most minor things, refusing to sign tickets when they're just saying, I promise to show up, or contact the court ahead of time, Fight this stuff in court, not the side of the road. You want to appear reasonable. If a jury ends up looking at this stuff, that really goes a long way.
Yeah, because you want the officer to look like a jerk. You don't want to look like the jerk.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, all right. Dome light activated nighttime. If it's not a big deal. Windows down, hands at 10 and 2. Officer approaches. What is your general, when you're interacting with police, because they're going to start asking all kinds of questions. What's your kind of go-to?
Is there a problem, officer?
Is that what you say?
Sure.
Okay.
Just like that.
Just like a movie?
Just like that. Is there a problem, officer?
All right. So obviously you want to know the reason for this stop. You want to, without admitting wrong, the way that I handle this is I kind of give non-responsive answers. Sometimes it makes the cops mad. Sometimes they think it's funny. But, you don't want to incriminate yourself. So at this point, anything you say to the police can and will be used against you. You're not in custody. Maybe you're being interrogated. So all this stuff is going to be admissible. So being careful with the words that you use. There is kind of a little bit of a calculation here of, do I kind of go along to get along, or do I, completely shut down? The complete shutdown, apart from like providing your name, address, date of birth, that kind of stuff, the absolute bare minimum required information, maybe that aggravates the police, but preserves your rights. On the flip side, maybe go along to get along. Maybe you incriminate yourself, but the transaction goes smoother. Maybe you get a warning. So it is really a balancing act right then and there on the side of the road.
Oh yeah, the last time I was pulled over, so he pulled me over, and literally I had no idea, no earthly idea why I was being pulled over. And in fact, I even told him, and he did he was a young officer, so he did the old, you know why I pulled you over? Well, they're asking that to elicit incriminating information. Yes, I admit I was speeding. I admit I ran that red light.
Sorry, I was drinking and driving while changing lanes while speeding through the school zone in the red light.
And scrolling through my phone.
Sure, yeah, don't do that.
But seriously, I had no earthly idea why I was stopped. I said, "Well, I know I wasn't speeding," and he was like wanting me to play the guessing game. I was like, he said, "No, you weren't speeding." I said, "I know I didn't run that red light." "Nope, and you didn't run the red light." And I said, "I know I went through that school zone back there, and I did everything perfectly." He goes, "Yep, you didn't do anything in the school zone." He stopped me because he was under the false impression, which I offered to, I did engage in a small argument with him. He claimed that I was looking at my phone while driving.
Well,
Okay?
I know that not to be in your character.
That is correct. Do I like to look at my phone while driving?
No.
No, I hate it. I don't like phone calls. I don't like texts while I'm driving. And so I was like, you got to be out of your mind. There's no way I was doing that. And so eventually I talked my way out of it.
There you go.
There.
But, for a lot of states, there's what we call a duty to notify law enforcement that, hey, there's a firearm present in the vehicle. Now, this looks different depending on where you are. Sometimes it's upon first contact. Sometimes it's upon, if the officer asks you. Some states, weird like Texas, there's theoretically a duty to notify that you're a license holder, but that's really as far as the duty goes. Hey, I'm a license to carry holder. And what does that look like? Maybe at the same time you're providing your driver's license, you're providing your license to carry, although it doesn't really have any teeth here anymore. They took away the criminal penalty. So
may I do a little history here?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So yes, back in the olden days, for you folks who know Texas law or familiar with Texas law or half know Texas law, you may remember that when Texas had the CHL, that there was an affirmative duty that all CHL holders had to notify every police officer they came in contact with who asked them for ID. They had to say, I'm a CHL holder and I have a handgun on me. Well, when Texas finally wised up and said, why are we not letting everybody carry guns in their car? They let everybody guns in their car. Then somebody realized, wow, these CHL holders now have more of a legal responsibility than people who do not have CHLs. And the Texas legislature did a very Texas legislature thing. Instead of just repealing the law that says that a CHL holder has to provide their ID, what they did is they're like, how can we do the weirdest thing possible to make it the most confusing to everybody? And they go, I know what we'll do. We'll remove the criminal and administrative penalties, but we'll keep the requirement that CHL holders have to show their license, their CHL to the police officer. So we wound up this weird hybrid where if you have an LTC, technically you have agreed to present your LTC when asked by the police. However, in the event you don't, there's absolutely nothing the state of Texas can do to you.
Yeah, because back in the day, they could charge you with a crime. They could file a license suspension for your license to carry a concealed handgun. All that's gone away. So what do you call a law without an enforcement mechanism? It's a good question. Maybe it's not.
It's no law at all.
Yeah, it's no law.
It's like a point in every direction is the same as no point at all.
Right. So
extra points for those of you who know what that's from.
All right. So do you have a duty to notify? Okay. Well, let's say you don't have a duty to notify. Do you notify? Well, if you're providing your license or permit to carry, or, if it comes to their attention, especially, let's say you have gun stickers on the back of your car. And if the police ask you at this point, hey, are you carrying today? What do you tell your folks?
Well, you just simply keep in mind, we have to also tell them that is one of the first pieces of information that still pops up on everybody's police computer is if they somebody is a license holder. So if you're a license holder, just get it out of the way. I can tell you from personal experience, every single time that I've notified a police officer that I have a gun and a license, it has either had no effect at all, or it has actually been a positive effect.
Yeah.
I had a police officer engage me in a fairly lengthy gun conversation. Oh, what kind of gun is it? Why do you like that gun? This is the gun I carry. It was, they enjoyed it. And the thing is that more often than not, it results in you being allowed to go along your merry way.
Yeah. And for why? Well, okay, instead of coming up, making contact, getting your driver's license, walking back to their car, typing in, finding out, oh, look, this person's on parole for murder or something like that. Typically when a person hands over their license or permit to carry, it's kind of an instant background check. The cops, they know, all right, this isn't a total POS. Maybe they have some criminal history, but at least they don't have to walk back to their car wondering, what kind of person am I dealing with? So it does give a little bit of peace off the bat. For the most part, I'll say it is to your benefit. And, if you provide your license or permit to carry, or you disclose, hey, I am carrying today, the first question that they usually have is, where is it? And this is where I say, just be a little bit careful. Don't shout, I have a gun, things like that. Don't go over well. Calmly, I'm carrying a firearm, a lot more syllables, a lot more drawn out, less alarming. Use kind of common sense there. Now, what is the Supreme Court? And I bet every state court has kind of followed this rule. If the police wanted to disarm you at that point, what have the courts said?
Well, the courts have said they've fallen on the good old standby officer safety.
Yeah, so the courts have upheld if the police want to ask you to step out, retrieve the firearm, disarm you, the courts have said, hey, that is not an unreasonable search or seizure for that temporary detention for officer safety.
Officer safety. The courts fall all over themselves in order to squeeze officer safety into any kind of detention, search, confiscation, anything. They always seem to gravitate towards that.
Yeah, but at that point, it's just staying calm, following instructions, especially when it comes to, hey, I'm going to pat you down for weapons, that kind of thing. Now, at this point, if they ask to search your vehicle after having retrieved a firearm, what would you generally tell folks?
Well, the search of the vehicle, that's kind of a bridge too far, if you will.
Yeah.
I would never consent to a search of the vehicle. You never know what you may find, what may be, dare we say, planted.
Yeah, it could happen. Well, especially like I spoke to somebody who was an Uber driver, consented to a search. They found drugs in his car. Clearly wasn't him. He's not a drug user, but it's just one of those things like you don't necessarily know every square inch of your car or what's in there.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, especially if you've had people in your car or you've loaned your car to someone, you have no idea. And also keep in mind that consent. So whenever we're talking about Fourth Amendment violations, Fifth Amendment violations, consent washes all bad behavior away.
Yeah.
So you may ruin a perfectly good Fourth Amendment illegal search and seizure case by giving consent.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the police have done. If the courts determine, oh, you voluntarily gave consent, then all bad acts are washed away.
Yeah, and the way, the officer says, oh, and this is how they do it. Oh, no dead bodies in the trunk. Oh, well, no. Well, then you don't mind if I check, do you? I mean, they kind of walk you down this path to disarm you, and then, all right. It's just, no thanks, officer. I don't consent to any searches. And does that mean that they're not going to search? No, they may still absolutely search your vehicle. There's lots of exceptions to searching vehicles, but you've preserved that point and not washed away all of those problems Edwin talked about by consenting. Now,
even if they bring out the dogs.
that's what I was going to say. Next, that's what we should cover.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, so even if they bring out the dogs, there is, believe it or not, the U.S. Supreme Court has determined that there is a point. Now, in a very Supreme Court way, they did not really tell us where this point is, so you don't get to sit there with your stopwatch on your phone counting down the seconds. But the Supreme Court has determined that there is a point, depending on the circumstances, at which time a detention for the purposes of obtaining a dog is an unreasonable seizure.
Right. So, that's if they, they have reasonable suspicion that you committed some traffic violation. If they don't have reasonable suspicion of anything else, and then they make you hang around for an hour to get a dog to search, well, guess what? Maybe this has crossed into the lines of unreasonable detention, where your rights would potentially block the discovery of additional, maybe at that point, illegally obtained evidence. And so, to preserve all that stuff, keeping your statements short, sweet, to the point, not consenting to any searches, that's going to preserve a lot of this stuff on the back end. But back to our gun owner at this point, at the conclusion of a traffic stop, you've safely pulled over, you've notified them, maybe they've disarmed you. I'll say 9 times out of 10, in my experience, they say, okay, just don't reach in that area and we're not going to have any problems. I've actually never been disarmed. But then at the conclusion of all of this, let's say they did disarm you. Theoretically, what should happen to the firearm at the end of all this?
Well, the firearm should be returned to you.
Yeah.
And it should be returned to you in the state in which the police officer took it. So if if it was a semi-automatic and he actually dropped the magazine, cleared the tube, then you are well within your rights to request that he put it all back the way he found it, because God knows you do not want to put yourself in the situation where the police officer said, well, he just grabbed his gun and loaded the magazine, so I had to shoot him.
Yeah, no, you don't. Yeah, that's a bad time. But, if there hasn't been an arrest, well, they shouldn't be seizing anything. The government just can't take property because they feel like it. Now, have we had firearms returned to folks, disassembled or with the ammunition taken out of it? Or, have you ever had a client, this happened to them, where the cops say, all right, pop your trunk, I'm going to set your firearm in there and close it. Once I leave, you can retrieve it. Have you ever had that happen?
I've heard of that. I've never actually.
I've had that happen to one guy.
Yeah.
So it's a little bizarre.
Yeah. Because again, he's trying to get a reason to look in your trunk.
Yeah. No, I mean there's all kinds of little sneaky tricks they do here, but for the most part, especially for a license or permit holders, we're very law-abiding demographic.
Yeah,
and you might be getting a warning.
Yeah, and that's one thing I want to emphasize to all of you folks. If you are a license holder, please familiarize yourself with whether or not your state does have a duty to disclose law. Like I said, most states have kind of done away with them. Some states do have them, and they do have criminal penalties attached. So you want to make sure that your particular state duty to inform.
Yeah, but we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video. And don't forget to question and comment in the section down below. And until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.